Good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, or good evening, or good night. This is Jen at Jen's Arty Inclinations, a place to create, share, and play. I've discovered that while I'm junk journaling, a lot of it is like a creative practice, and I think it helps us in all of our art, and it's a great place to also display all of our art. So I thought, what a fun, easy, beginner-friendly way to do creative exercises, improve our artistic confidence, and, refine your personal style, or find it if you haven't found it already. So I hope you'll join me, and, we'll just play about weekly, or weekly-ish. Hello, everyone. I really like doing stab bindings, and I find I often end up kind of creating my own pattern on the spines, probably partly because I'm not very good at measuring and following instructions, and partly because it's fun and it's creative to play with different ways on binding your papers. I often use little cards. They can actually just be popped in my little ideas book, and it just reminds me of different ways to bind things, and I sometimes just jot a few notes. Today I'll run through 4 basic stab bindings. These are Japanese ones. So here I'm just ruling a line so that I can make some dots along, a straight line. Now these, as I said, are based on Japanese stab bindings. However, most Asian countries have versions of stab binding. So there's a 4-hole Japanese stab binding, and there's also a Korean one that's a very similar style, except it does it with 5 holes. So it's worth having a little, Google search. Let yourself go down that rabbit hole. Now, when you're marking your holes, I'm marking 4 holes as my main holes. And the only rule is to make them the same distance apart unless you make a design choice that you'd like some closer together. And that's something that you can do once you've done the first basic one. So here I'm doing the first holes. I just did the 4. So you'll actually see these as I'm punching them. I'm not giving you measurements because it depends upon how tall your piece of paper is. So I use a centering ruler, and that means that in the center of the ruler, it says 0, and then you can actually count out in equal distances from it on both sides. So that makes it easy. It's quite a neat little trick. Anyway, now that is my basic one. What I'm going to be doing is measuring some string. I tend to measure a bit more for these, so I kind of go 4 to 5 times the length. You don't always need that much, but I find that generally works for this 4-hole. And then we start sewing through. So I like to start in the second one from the bottom. And the way that I like to do it is go all the way up the straight line. And then when I'm coming back down, I go over the edge. So I've just clipped. If you've got a book, you'll be clipping the whole book, but I've just clipped the end of that thread there so that I don't have to hold it with my hand while I'm sewing. So just in and out, up the top, and then around the top edge, and back in. And now I can start to go over the spine itself. So I'm going over the header there at the top, and now I'm coming in to go back out through the spine. So it's such an easy pattern, and this is one that you can do on any project really. And the beautiful thing is that you don't have to have papers that fold in half. So sometimes we've got booklets, or maybe it's a journal of your art. Maybe it's a journal of photos or postcards, and we can't fold them in half. So this is a way to bind them where they're still sewn, but you're not having to use any glue. So you'll see how that one just filled in that blank space on the hole, and that's all you're doing. So when you do it around the edge, you go out through that hole and back in that same hole. So that's something just to remember with these. Sometimes in some of the more complex patterns, you can have string going through the same hole multiple times, like 5 or 6 times. So I think the most I go through the same hole is maybe 4. But yes, if you have a look, we've gone through this hole. As I come up, that'll be the 3rd time we've gone through this hole. Now, if you're starting in a book, you would actually start from the middle of your pages out, and then when you finish off in the same place, and you'd go back into the middle of the pages on the other side. You'll kind of see that later on when I'm doing the books. So it's quite methodical, it's quite easy. Now you can see once I've gone past that point, I've gone all the way down to the end again, just on that last one. So now I've got the base, the bottom of the spine there, and then I'll go around the edge of the spine. And then if I was in a book, I'd be going back in the centre through that hole, but because I'm not in a book, I can just tie it off on the back. Now, here's something, one of my little confessions. I find mucking about getting the thread back into the middle of the page so that the knot's hidden is a bit of a pain. So I often make my tying off place a bit of a feature. I might do a bow, or I might do something like that so that I can tie it on the outside so that it looks nice. It just, it makes it a little bit easier to do. So there you go. It's a 4-hole. I first went up one end, then I went back down the edges, and then I went down the other end and did the last edge, and then I just tied it off. So this is what I want to show you next. The next 2 that we'll do, which is the noble and not the tortoise, the hemp leaf, the noble and the hemp leaf, they actually build on your initial holes. So I'm going to punch the holes in the same place just to show you. So I still start off with that basic 4-hole station, and then I'm going to add holes as I go. Okay, so they're all the same on all of the cards I'm going to use, including the 4th actually, which is going to be the tortoise shell. So those first 4 holes, they're the baseline for all, the base template for all of the next sewing patterns that I'm going to make. That was my watch just beeping there. There you go. I love that. In Kylie's videos, Kylie's Card Craft, we get to hear her lovely Big Bertha clock every so often. On these next 2 cards, each of these are an inch apart. So I'm going across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes, equidistant in the centre of those first 4 holes. Yes, it's complex. Once you do your own, it will be easier. First one I'm doing is the noble hole. Now I could actually punch through both of these because that hole is going to be the same on both of them. And you'll see why it's called the noble hole. It's called the noble hole because the binding that we're going to be doing is called the noble binding. So as I said, this isn't really an instruction video. This is really to give you the basic concept, and I want you to have a little bit of confidence to go out and play about a little bit. Once you've got the first principles, you actually will find that you'll be able to make up your own patterns, and you'll also see a couple of my mistakes that I do along the way here and some simple ways that you can fix those mistakes. Because sometimes we forget, to go through a hole or something like that. But it all is not lost. You don't always need to start from the complete scratch again. Alrighty, so the second one had all the holes punched, including the 2 nobles, and the first one just has the 2 nobles with the base 4. So now, again, I'm measuring out my thread, and this time I'm doing it 4 to 6 times this length of the spine. So see, I've still got those base 4 holes. And then those 2 is what we call the noble holes. So I don't think you'll forget that. I think I've repeated that heaps of times now. But even the way that you do this, I sometimes do this where I don't do all of them over the header and the footer. I might just do one and then all of them on the spine. Or I might miss, them. Lots of different ways that you can actually do this in the end. So, same principle as what we did on the first 4-hole binding. We go all the way up to the end, and then we go around the head first with our string and back up into the same hole. And then this is the variation. We'll be going to the noble hole. So back up through that same hole. In the first one, we went around to the edge. Now, this is where I forgot, but we go into the noble hole and around the header. And then your next one will be around the spine. So back into the noble hole to go around the header for the noble hole, and then around the spine for the noble hole. So see, this is like the 3rd time into this hole, and that's how it goes. And then we're filling in the gap on the back to go back up to the first hole. Now here, I actually forgot you're supposed to go around the spine from this, and I forgot. However, it still looks nice in the final binding, so that's okay. You could skip that. I believe I did it right on the bottom one, but yeah, you'll see it. So then around the spine, pretending that we did around the spine the same thing for 1, but we're now doing it, for 4, but we're now doing it on 3, and then we'll do the same on 2. Around the spine, back into the same hole, and then we're going to go down to number 1, and we're going to noble the bottom edge. So when we're nobling, it just means that extra little hole. So you go around the head out of that hole and your base hole, and you go around the bottom out of that hole and the base hole, and you also go around the spine out of that hole and the base hole, and around the spine out of the header hole and the base hole as well. So here we go, going back into the base hole, number 1, and then we go down to 1. So you'll see on the back, that's actually going to create that line around the head, around the spine, around the bottom and around the spine, and then you're filling in that gap and going the other way to 1. See? Easy peasy. This is where I'm saying, oops, yep, I forgot to go around the spine on 1 and 4. But if you look at the pattern, it still looks nice. So, and it would still work. It's just not an official noble. So you can see I just forgot those 2 lines there. But there you go. There's the little instructions on what I did, going up one way, and then you're nobling your edges and you're doing the edges on your spine. All right, the next one, we're going 6 to 8 times the length, and this is called a hemp leaf. So, same principle again. I'm going up the straight line all the way to the end. It's just an easy way to keep track. Because we're adding that extra variation on here, one of the easiest ways is to do your noble first. So you noble it, and then you can go back and fill in your hemp leaf, which is like those little houses. So that's sort of easy, and it kind of gets you into the rhythm of trying to remember to do it right every time, so that you do it right every time. Even though in the one that I just showed you, I did it wrong. But as I say, that's part of the creative part of this, that you can unwittingly create your own design sometimes. Do you like that excuse, everyone? Like I said, not an instructional video. It's really trying to help you feel a bit free and to play. I was finding that I wasn't doing as much Japanese stab binding as I wanted to because I wasn't getting it exactly right to what it was called. And then I realised that, but we can make up our own bindings. And this holds it so beautifully all the way around. It's actually decorative. So there's no reason why it can't be decorative. In fact, when you create something new, it's probably a different pattern. It's just that we don't know it. Alrighty, so going all the way back down to the edge, and you can see I forgot on number 4 again. So all the way back down, and then we'll go around the edge and we'll noble it again. So first hole, notice how that went back into itself when I went around the bottom, then down to the noble, back around the bottom again, back into the noble. Then I'm going around the spine and back into the noble. So that's how you get that nice pattern. It's a nice look, isn't it? I really like it. So then back into one, and then that gives us our little angle thread. And now what I should do is go around the spine, and there I've done it. So that's what a noble is supposed to look like. See how it's gone back around the spine. There we go. Woohoo! A proper noble corner. You've finally seen one. Okay, so next on this one, this is the way that I was taught to do it. So we actually go through down to the first angle and then the spine, and then we go back up through that same one. I complete the first one, and on the next one, I just do the V's. So see how that first little house is done there? And now I'm going to 2 and then to the little hole between 2 and 3, and then I'm going to 3, and then the little hole between 3 and 4. Let me just get my bearings here. There we go, up it goes. That's the other thing, it is like sewing your 3 pamphlet stitch. You don't want to actually put your needle through the thread because otherwise you won't be able to keep it nice and tight. So there we go, 3, and then I'm going to the one between 3 and 4. And then I believe I go back up through 4. So I've got those 2 angles that I'm just showing you there. All right, so now I go back into 4. And now I can start filling out the rest of the house. So all you're doing is you're just sewing to the gaps. So there it is, those 2 strokes and those 2 angle strokes. That's what I like to do. I find I can always get back to the start that way. So first one, and then this is the one that I should have nobled before. So I've picked it up. So that's what I mean. Sometimes even if you've made a mistake partway through, you can still pick it up. Now I'm going to the peak and then I'll go around to the spine. And that's basically what I'm doing now all the way back down is I'm just going to the next hole and then wrapping the spine. The next hole, wrapping the spine. And wrapping the spine is when you go in and out the same hole. So you start there and you finish there. Wrapping the spine. See how it's coming together? So if this is a little bit too complex, there are lots and lots of videos that you can find that go through this in real detail. Some even give you templates. You can even look for free templates if you do a Google search or do a search on YouTube. Someone like Lemon Tree Binding would be good because that was one of the places. Creative Bug, they do some good tutorials. So yeah, I'd recommend those. I'll try and link them if I remember in the description. It's always hard to remember everything you promised. And there we go, the last one. I'm just finishing off that house and then I can go back up to 2 and finish in 2 on that spine wrap. And then I can tie it off. So see how there's just that little last stroke that isn't filled in on the back, that last line. And I'm just having some trouble getting beside the threads because they're getting quite tight now. So when you're poking your holes, poke them a bit bigger. You can use your Big Shot, obviously, to make your holes, and they actually do quite a nice size on that 1/8. So there you go, tied off on the back. That is your hemp leaf, and there's a little description on how I do it. I build the noble first, and then you can see here, I forgot to wrap that around the spine before I tied it off. So I just did a quick fix. And if I was doing this on a real book, I'd probably still do this, still have that knot, and then I could put like a big button on it and make a feature of it. No one would know that I didn't intend to do that. Do you like it? All right, now this is the last one that I haven't gone through because really you can't do this without showing you a proper tutorial. But what you do in this one is slightly different. The holes on either side of your first 4, they're closer together and you're putting an extra 1. So you're actually, in this one, following what I showed you with my little pointer there. So there's the little cheat sheet on the first, there's the cheat sheet on the second. The only difference with the tortoiseshell is that you actually build your houses all the way as you go and you do your straight line at the end, and then you'll find that you generally will be okay on that one and it will work really, really well. So I like doing the tortoiseshell a lot because it's easy to remember. Building the houses out to the spine all the way, all the little angle lines and the straight lines, and then just the straight line at the back is the very last thing. So I do find that easier. Look, all I'm showing you here, I ended up doing a couple of little booklets that I had, and I did them with a 3 baseline instead of a 4 baseline, and they still look, cute, but they're not officially the 4-hole, Japanese stab binding or the hemp leaf officially because they don't have that 4 base. So just that variation of the base, makes it a different kind of binding. So had a bit of fun. I did it about 6 to 8 times the length of the spine. I tend to sit around there when I don't really know how it's going to end out. But then, same principle. I did the line first, I believe, in this one, all the way up and back, and I just caught the thread in that clip. So I went in through the middle of the pages. I haven't gone all the way through the pages. So I think I show you at the end. You can see it's not actually coming up through that hole there. All right, so I'm nobling my end, and I think I then ended up on this one going all the way. Let's have a look. Let's see what I do. I went back up into the hole, and then I just created a hemp leaf kind of effect between the next ones. So I'm going back down and I'm filling in all the gaps in the hemp leaf style. So pretty easy, really, once you've done that one, even though I'm working with 3 holes, not 4. So it still works for 3 holes. It still works for 5 holes. It still works for 8 holes. You can do this on any number of holes. It doesn't have to be odd or even, which is great. I really love that. So almost finished here, and I'll show you how I go back into the middle of the pages. So here I'm just taking off my threads, and then I'm finding where that thread was in the middle, and now I'm going back through the last hole, but I'm just putting my needle through the center of the page where I put my thread in from before. Now this is where I've shown you as I actually got that right. However, I kept getting it wrong and into which page I'm going in. But you can see, if you can be more patient than me, you can really hide your knot inside these, because you can actually even tuck it into the spine, which is absolutely fabulous. Now, when you're doing your cover, it's nice just to have a score line on your cover so that you can easily bend the cover up, and then you can look through your pages. So I'll just do a quick flick through the pages here. These were some of the pages I did in Ephemerembra, where I was creating some notepad pages. I've put in, some different pages, some music pages, some Edith Holden pages, all sorts of different things. The other thing is you can create a template so that you can do all your measuring on a template, and then all you're doing is you're poking your holes through. So there's the pattern of the tortoiseshell as well. And this is me carefully going through the middle. I'm just pushing my needle out through the middle, and then I'll go back in up through the hole from the middle of the book. I just find that easier because then your tail is on the right side, and yeah, it's just how I like to do it. So through it goes. See what I mean? And then when I finish on the last sewn station, I'll actually be able to meet that one in the middle again and tie it off just like you saw me do before. So this is, similar, but this one I'm going around the spine first to complete all the little houses first, and then I'll do the straight line at the end. So you're going in and out of the straight line to get to the next station. So I'm going up here, but when you get to the end, you'll fill in all the little gaps on that straight line, and you'll come back out in the centre of the book. So as I said, I encourage you to play. I think I've given you enough to do the basic 4-hole, and then I've given you a little bit that you can start to play with the other variations as well. I hope. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, or if I forget to link something that I've said, because I'll make sure that I add it and I can update my description. It's so not anywhere near as complex as what it looks, and it's actually really fun once you give yourself a bit of freedom to make a few mistakes. So there you go. There's the second one, and I'm just tying it off in the middle now. I'm about to put my thread through the middle. There we go. And yeah, the second one I did get it pretty quickly, which was good. Tied it off, cutting it down close, tucking that thread into the spine, and it's just like completely disappears, which is really, really nice. I just like to, as I said, score the cover so that it's easy to flick through. This book's the same as the other one. I just decorated a cover with a couple of leftover pieces of cardboard I had, did some inking, and Bob's your uncle, and Sally's your best friend. Alrighty, there we go. So they're the little books I made. That was the first one I showed you, which I love that paper bag book. And I hope you go out and have a bit of fun and play. So there's the patterns of these particular spines that I did. But there's so much that you can play with. Go and just make up your own spine binding. See how you go. I hope you enjoy. Take care. I'd love it if you could leave me a comment below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed what you saw today. And of course, please subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you next time. And in the meantime, keep creating. Enjoy!